Wait. Before you take off, I have a question. Now, it's going to seem awfully lighthearted given what's occurring around the country, but it's pertinent to the subject at hand. When was the last time this city hosted the NBA championship?
The NBA championship. 2004?
2004? Okay, got it. It was before my time, that's all I know. Well, not before my time, before I was here in Los Angeles. That's what I meant by my times. That's not that.
Before the destruction of the Second Temple, there was a player called Kobe Bryant.
Had he stuck with Shaquille O'Neal for the period of time that they were both playing basketball, we would have had hosted the NBA Finals for a long time. Do we all agree upon that?
Yes.
Getting Jews to agree on anything is a fantastic thing. The fact we all agree upon it is fantastic, isn't it?
See, we're bringing communities together.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do. So, 2004 is not that long ago that the inhabitants of our city had to reserve the first few weeks of June each year to watch the NBA Finals. Having lived in small towns for the vast majority of my life, I have no idea what it must be like to host a championship in your own town. I mean, I imagine it's quite the spectacle. But as someone who has watched from afar, I can tell you what I enjoy the most about the finals. And it's not the celebrations, it's not the parades, it's not even the games themselves. It's the stories. Long before tip-off, the news media machine is in full effect, giving audiences around the globe an avalanche of stories. Stories about the sport, stories about the players, stories about the coaches, stories about how the teams fought through such adversity to come together and become champions of their respective conferences. I mean, virtually no stone is left unturned in the search for a great story to present about the champions or the would-be champions of the world. And I don't know about you, but for me, the stories make the games so much more fascinating. Without the stories, we're just watching basketball. But with the stories, we're witnessing history in the making. Because of the stories, each possession, each shot transcends its physical confines, acquiring emotional and historical significance. It becomes a single thread woven into a tapestry of challenges, struggles, and achievements, one that demands our admiration and our gratitude. The stories are what give the actions on the court meaning. The stories are what make sports more than just a game. Our tradition is very familiar with this phenomenon, the power of stories to add meaning and purpose to our experiences. And our parsha this week, Ki Tavo, begins with an example of this technique. Before eating from their harvests, the Israelites were required to come to the temple to bring the first fruits of their ingathering and to recite the following tale. And I hope you'll forgive me, but I don't have it memorized, so I'm going to read. My forebear was a fugitive Aramean who went down to Egypt with small numbers and sojourned there. But in Egypt he became a great and very populous nation. The Egyptians oppressed us, imposing heavy labor upon us, and so we cried out to Adonai, the God of our ancestors. Adonai heard our plea and saw our plight, our misery, and our oppression. Therefore Adonai freed us from Egypt by a mighty hand, by an outstretched arm and awesome power, and by signs and portents. God brought us to this place and gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Therefore, I now bring the first fruits of the soil, which you, Adonai, have given to me. This story, which we often read on Passover, is actually associated with the harvest and therefore the festival of Shavuot. And it gives historical and theological context to the harvest that the Israelites are preparing to eat. Without the story, we're just eating. But with the story, we're fulfilling part of the divine promise. Because of the story, the act of eating transcends its physical confines, acquiring spiritual and historical significance. It becomes a scene in an epic play about a challenging but profound relationship between a people and their God, one that demands our admiration and our gratitude. The story is what gives the action true meaning. The story is what makes the harvest more than just food. And we find this technique repeated constantly throughout Jewish tradition. From the Shamroom prayer we sang earlier tonight, which tells the story of the Sabbath, to the Hamotzi blessing, which reveals the source of our nourishment before we eat. Judaism always seems to have some sort of story to provide context and meaning for what we're about to do. Unfortunately, there's one story that appears to be missing, and it's the most important story of all. It's your story. And this past week, the loved ones of an individual by the name of Michael Cobb discovered just how tragic it can be when we leave that story out. I'm going to read again for you. Born and raised in Burbank, Michael graduated with honors from the School of Real Life and worked his tail off. After 20 years in the world of medical sales and management, his life turned a corner, and he became the sales manager for Channel Island Surfboards, his dream job. Michael worked hard and played harder, whether it was camping trips and riding motorcycles through the deserts of California with his dad, or surf trips to Panama, Indonesia, Hawaii, and his favorite, Fiji. Michael was an incredibly kind and generous soul. He leaves behind his beloved wife, Delia, his cat, Zena, and a trio of chihuahuas. Now, Michael's story is powerful, evocative, full of meaning. The problem is, he's already gone. Though his story remains crucial to his friends and his family, it can't give any meaning to the time they spend together with him. It can only give meaning to his memory. So many aspects of our tradition teach us about the power of stories to give our actions meaning. Before we enjoy the first fruits, we tell their story, giving our harvest purpose and worth. Before we enjoy the Sabbath, we tell its story, giving our rest purpose and worth. Before we enjoy a meal, we tell the story of how the meal was granted to us, giving our eating purpose and worth. So why do we wait to tell the stories of the ones we love? Why do we wait until it's too late? Tonight, we celebrate Shabbat, God's gift to the Jewish people. But we can also celebrate something even greater. We can celebrate each other. If you're here tonight with someone who means something to you, if you're sitting at home with someone who means something to you, if someone who means something to you is just a phone call away, don't wait. Don't put it off until tomorrow. Don't put it off another moment. Tell them what really matters. Tell them the story about how they came to mean something to you. And when you wake up tomorrow, do it again, and again, and again, and again, until every encounter, every phone call, every embrace, every meal becomes filled with historical and spiritual significance. Until each shared moment becomes a single thread in a woven tapestry of compassion, obligation, sacrifice, and nourishment that demands our admiration and our gratitude. Then our time together will have true meaning, and then our lives will be more than just living. Shabbat Shalom.